a book or two to review. Hello, so this is the book today. Favourite of Fortune by Andrew Bond, Frank Crown and Andrew Lambert. It's all about Captain John Quillam, a Trafalgar hero and a very interesting gentleman all round. Now, you might be wondering, where have 4 random books gone? Well, honestly, doing 4 books in 15 minutes, after looking back, I really didn't manage to do it always that well. In fact, it was usually a bit of a rush. And so, I decided that as it is now Wednesday, and it's the 9th of June, of 2021, and I'm a big enough adult to admit when I don't get things all right. So, I'm going to try and do 1 book, and I'm going to try and do it in about 10 minutes. Because believe it or not, that's about the average. So this was sent to me to review by Seaforth, which is always nice. They sent me lots of lovely books to review, which means, whilst I'm not paid for the review, I have been given the book for free. It's got lots of pictures in. It's got some very nice colour slides. Gorgeous things in. And it's got lovely maps in. So it's a good book if you want something to give you a bit of an idea about sort of what was going on in a period. And it is, I would have to say, beautifully bound if you consider that's inside the proper hardback copy. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to get a version, get the hardback one. There is a link down below if you like the book. This is the bit on the back. The Royal Navy of Nelson's time was not short of heroes nor of outstanding achievements. But even in this crowded field, the career of Captain John Quillam stands out. So often the right man in the right place at the right time. He was justly described by a contemporary as the favourite of fortune. Now, that is a phrase which doesn't go around a lot. Napoleon had one of his marshals he described like that. Nelson was very, very sparing. A favourite of fortune is kind of like saying the golden goose in the modern world. In World War II, you probably go for Philip Vian because he managed to do quite so much as a favourite of fortune. You know, I'd say also Fack on the American side. The Fack weave and all Fack does, and this flying definitely is a favourite of fortune. Born on the Isle of Man 250 years ago, Quillam has until now evaded study of his extraordinary life. Indeed, whilst celebrated as a Manx hero, in the wider world beyond the island, one of the most important men on the quarterdeck of HMS Victory at the Battle of Trafalgar remains largely unrecognised. Trafalgar, however, was not even the high point of Quillam's professional career journey. From the lowest rung of the ladder in the dockyard at Portsmouth, he climbed to become Victory's first lieutenant, having already survived 2 of the bloodiest sea battles of the era at Camperdown and Copenhagen. In the process, he won a share in undreamed-of wealth through the seizure of one of the largest hauls of Spanish gold ever taken by the Georgian Navy. Promoted post-captain, Quillam reached the apogee of his profession, commanding frigates in the Baltic and on the Newfoundland station in the War of 1812. There, in a bizarre twist worthy of an O'Brien or Forrester novel, he defeated an accusation of shirking an engagement with the American super-frigate president in a court-martial brought by his own first lieutenant. The first full biography of a far-from-ordinary naval officer is itself an unusual collaboration between 3 writers, each interested in different aspects of Quillam's career, but united by belief that it deserves a wider audience. And of course, Andrew Lambert would draw me to any book, because he's my old prof. But it's Andrew Bond, John Quillam's 4 times great-nephew by marriage. After reading rowing and engineering at Cambridge, always worthwhile reading those 2, and a brief interlude as a teacher, he spent 40 years as a technical journalist, writing for and editing a succession of engineering periodicals. Since retirement, he's divided his time between researching John Quillam's career and, with his wife Marion, sailing their traditional Norfolk Broads river cruiser. That's a life which we all aspire to. Frank Crown, RBV, FRICS. I know those ones. Fellow of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. Trained and worked as a chartered building surveyor. Retired in 2000. He was for many years a part-time lecturer in local studies for Liverpool University, continuing education department, and as such a founding member of the Manx Guild of Tour Guides. In 2003, he was awarded the Rebelline Van Hanan Trophy, a Manx government award for work in the fields of culture and heritage, and has also been honoured for his work in industrial archaeology and local history. He is a long-time member of the Isle of Man Natural History and Antiquarian Society, and for 12 years served on the trust body of the Manx Museum and National Trust. Ooh. And finally, of course, Andrew Lambert is Lawton Professor of Naval History in the Department of War Studies at King's College London. His most recent books include Nelson, Britannia's God of War, Admirals, Franklin, a tragic hero of polar navigation, and the challenge Britain versus America in the Naval War of 1812, which won the Anderson Medal of the Society for Nautical Research. Crusoe's Island, a rich and curious history of pirates, castaways and madness in 2016, was a study of English insularity, and Sea Power States, Maritime Culture, Continental Empires, and the Conflict that has shaped the modern world, 2018, examined the cultural and construction of maritime identity, and won the 2018 Gilda Lehrman Book Prize in Military History. It's been translated into several languages, so have many of those books. They're all worth reading. This is a cool work, and it's literally published in 2021, and I just used the word literally. Yeah. So it's a very, very new book. Very cool. And I'll put its details, its ISBN, as well as a link to an Amazon thing, which, if you buy it through Amazon, I get some money. I think it's about half a penny, so don't worry if you don't. I'm not going to be crying, but if you do, well, half a penny's half a penny. Well, that's up to my own book bill. So, my favourite chapter is the chapter which is about HMS Amazon. So I'm going to read you that chapter. And it's not a massive chapter, but it's a good chapter. It's literally that long. One thing I would say is this is this is definitely on the smaller side of normal book writing, book edited space, and therefore in terms of its writing size. So, but I do hear they do a big text version for people who are hard of seeing, but I haven't found out details about whether there's a Braille version. Amazon, one of only 2 ships in her Harpoonis class, was, like Ephalion, a 38-gun frigate. These large and highly regarded fleet and cruising warships were the prime appointments for any captain or lieutenant. When Quillam joined her in March 1800, she was less than a year old. With a design complement of 284, she was armed with 28 18-pounder cannon on her upper deck, 2 9-pounders and 12 32-pounder carronades on her quarterdeck, and 2 9-pounders and another 2 32-pounder carronades on her forecastle. In command, since her commissioning, had been Captain Edward Riou. 10 years old in Quillam, Riou had gone as a midshipman on Cook's last voyage to the South Seas, and served as a lieutenant in the West Indies during the American War. He achieved some fame when in 1789, Guardian, which he commanded, struck an iceberg 12 days out from the Cape of Good Hope, while carrying stores and convicts to Botany Bay. Riou allowed the 260 of those on board who wished to take to boats to do so, while he and 60 others, after 1,200 miles and 9 weeks, and with the decks awash, beached the ship back at the Cape. Of those who had left her, just 15 survived. It's further proof that your best lifeboat in life is the big ship if you're on the ocean. Made post-captain in 1791, Riou's most recent command had been a 40-gun Beaulieu, from which he had been invalided, only recovering his health in time to take over the Amazon. Riou was a complex character with strong religious beliefs, on the one hand, compassion enough to solicit pardons for the convicts who stayed with him on the Guardian, on the other hand, a strict disciplinarian with a fanatical regard for cleanliness. Honestly, most naval officers at this time did have a fanatical regard for cleanliness. Let's be honest, if you have mess and dirt in a ship in this period, you have no antibiotics, you have no decent medical care, your only ability to prevent disease is prevention. That's your only ability to control disease, is prevention. So, fanatical regard for cleanliness, that is not something I would consider really a bad thing to say about an officer of this period. At a time when, in theory, the maximum number of lashes allowed without court-martial was 12, in the 12 months after Quillam joined Amazon, 36 lashes were administered on no fewer than 9 occasions, and 24 a further 14 times. Riou certainly believed in working his ship's officers and men hard. That may be why, in the first 11 months of the commission, he got through no less than 6 lieutenants, and by the end of March 1800 had none at all. Nevertheless, all of the 3 who took up their appointments within days of each other in April 1800, one remained until promoted more than a year later, a second for 2 full years, and Quillam until the ship was paid off in August 1802. Riou may have been a hard taskmaster, but he'd already shown the ship's company that he was brave, skillful, and perhaps more important to them, lucky. In fact, Amazon does not seem to have been the Admiralty's first choice for Quillam after the loss of the Ephalion. A surviving unsigned memo reveals that his original commission was to Neptune, the ship on which he had served briefly before joining the Chapman in 1798. Since Neptune was Sir Erasmus Gower's last command before his promotion to Rear Admiral, it's not too fanciful to see his invisible hand at work on Quillam's behalf once more. However, Quillam was already a frigate officer, and a good one, too good to be wasted in a line of battleship at this stage of the war, while Riou, an officer of great promise, needed a good frigate lieutenant. They kept sending him bad ones. Unusually, Amazon's muster book gives each new lieutenant seniority and reveals that Riou appointed them in that order. Joseph Orr, Masefield as first lieutenant, Quillam as second lieutenant, and David Johnston as third. Amazon was then lying at Spithead, repairing damage suffered from returning from Ireland the previous month. It was a further 6 weeks before she was ordered to sea. In the meantime, Riou exercised people at reefing topsails and developed their gunnery before being granted leave to exercise and fire at a mark, and recording in detail how much powder his 32-pounder carronades required as they heated up with the repeated firing. Riou's immediate role was the defence of trade, taking charge of the escort for a large West Indies convoy. In addition to Amazon, the escort would comprise 2 other frigates, 2 gun brigs, a sloop and a cutter. They finally got away with 121 trading merchant vessels in company on the 26th of April 1800. Imagine that. 121 merchant ships and 7 escorts, of which one is a cutter, so we can't really count that. A sloop, 2 gun brigs, 3 frigates. On the 26th of April 1800, and having been forced by a shift in the wind to shelter in Tor Bay for 5 days, by 19th May were off Madeira. Their escort duty was no formality. That escort duty was no formality was indicated by Riou's subsequent report that 2 French cruisers kept hovering about the fleet for 2 or 3 days, which determined me to chase the largest entirely out of the fleet. And we should have taken her in 2 hours had we continued the chase, with the risk of the parting company of the fleet. Instead, after a classic convoy defence operation, an object less than for Quillam, he had to be content with the thought of the possible prizes on the return journey, i.e., the convoy was more important than the battle, because if you chase off one and a whole load more come back when you're not there, then you haven't won. Yes, you might have caught another ship, an enemy ship, that's great, but if you've lost the whole convoy, it doesn't matter. The convoy comes first. On 26th of May, with Funchal, 500 miles astern, Amazon signalled that an opportunity offered for sending letters into port, and the following afternoon parted company with the convoy and the rest of the escort. More than 2 weeks elapsed before they saw another sail, but on 20th of June, 370 miles southwest of Cape Finisterre, a lookout reported a strange sail to windward coming down before the wind. Amazon set all possible sail and chased, and 3 hours later was coming up with a chance, a brig which had hoisted a Danish flag at her main topgallant mast. The Danish flag was a ruse, seemed to confirmed when at 1 p.m. she bore up with about 4 points and set studding sails. Riou beat to quarters, and about 2 o'clock began to fire at the chase. By now the brig's captain and crew knew the game was up, facing certain destruction from the frigate's overwhelming firepower. At about 2:30, a shot nearly reaching her, she hoisted French national colours and hauled them down again immediately and brought to. She proved to be La Julie, a letter of marque belonging to Bordeaux, from which she sailed last Tuesday in company of a brig privateer bound on a cruise, and 2 other letters of marque. She had 8 guns, part of which she had thrown overboard, had 220 men, and was 260 tons. Realizing that there was a real chance of a further success, Riel wasted no time in taking out of the prisoners and sending a prize crew on board before he stood to the eastward for the night, for the better chance of falling in with the consorts of our prize. His luck was in. Although dawn revealed an empty horizon, the lookouts at 4 p.m. saw a strange sail on the lee bow. Amazon immediately made sail and chased, and after just 3 hours had gained upon the chase, and coming up very fast, and being within gunshot, we fired the chase guns at her till we came very near, when she hoisted English colours, Union downwards, and hauled them down again. This later success turned out to be the British merchantman Amelie, bound from Savannah to London with cotton, rice, and deer hides. She had been taken a week earlier by Minerve, another French privateer from Bordeaux. Again, Rieu took the prisoners out of her and sent an officer and party of seamen to navigate her. Such recaptures were a vital element of trade defence, reducing losses and hence insurance rates, while detaining prime enemy seamen for the duration. With a speed limited by the prizes, it was almost 2 weeks later that Amazon brought them into Plymouth Sound. Increasing tension with Russia and the Baltic states, prompted in particular by Britain's assertion of her right to search all neutral ships, coupled with signs that France, under newly self-appointed First Consul Napoleon Bonaparte, was planning an invasion of Britain, shifted the naval spotlight to the North Sea. Rieu, a rising star, was ordered to the area of the maximum danger. In early August, Amazon joined 3 other frigates, Pomone, Preonte, and Terpsichore. 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 And the lugger Nile off Ostend. By 9th of August, they were at an anchor in the Denloo Passage, at the outer end of the River Scheldt, the obvious starting point for an invasion. From the masthead, 3 French frigates were seen lying at anchor, as well as a new Dutch 64-gun ship that had recently been launched. They spent the rest of the August and the first half of September patrolling the Dutch and Belgian coasts, while Rieu continued to train Amazon's gunnery teams. When Pomone parted company on the 15th of September, Rieu took command of the squadron. At sunset, standing in to examine the ships at Flushing, found them as before. However, he was soon reminded just how inhospitable the North Sea could be, as the squadron was driven off that coast by strong gales and squalls. By daylight on 21st of September, Amazon had no land in sight, nor one of her squadron, and was 50 miles northwest of the Texel. Making their way southward again, 2 days later, they saw the yards or boom of some small vessel close under the lee bow floating, the remains of the yards and masts and rigging of some small sloop or cutter rigged vessel founded at that spot. By 22nd December 1800 the year, Amazon was at an anchor in Yarmouth Roads, but in the interim, the strategic situation had taken a further turn for the worse. Austria's defeat at Hohenheim left Britain the only state at war with France. This strengthened Tsar Paul's determination to end her claimed right to stop and search neutrals, creating a League of Armed Neutrality, linking Denmark, Norway, Prussia, Sweden, and Russia. The League's implicit threat to deny Britain access to the Baltic and its vital naval stores was interpreted in London as not so much a declaration of neutrality as an act of war. Submitting to the Tsar's demands would cripple the Royal Navy and lose the war, so a fleet was to be quickly assembled to uphold the belligerent right of search. Newly arrived at Yarmouth were Pomone and 3 battleships, Reasonable, Ardent, and Polyphemus. Experienced observers might have noticed that the shallower draft 64s were eminently suited to operating in Baltic's restricted and shallow waters. The focus was moving inexorably north, allegedly prompting Rieu to go ashore to make arrangements for the Danish members of his crew not to have to fire on their fellow countrymen. In command at Yarmouth was Vice Admiral Archibald Dixon, who had led a naval diplomatic mission to Copenhagen the previous August and now had the task of assembling a larger fleet for a rather less diplomatic return visit. By the middle of January 1801, Admiral Sir Hyde Parker had been appointed Commander-in-Chief, while Vice Admiral Lord Nelson was named as his second-in-command. Parker's role was to talk, Nelson's to fight if talks failed. Amazon remained at Yarmouth until the end of January, caulkers working on her decks while the ship's company set up the rigging and stowed the holds. Ryu, maintaining his professional focus, exercised great guns and small arms and fired on a mark, as well as firing 2 royal salutes, the one on New Year's Day to celebrate the Union of Ireland, then on 26th of January she headed back to Texel. It's 20 minutes. So I'm well over the 15-minute mark and I've only been talking about one book. But it's a very good book. It's one I thoroughly recommend if you're interested in Age of Sail. It's one I thoroughly recommend if you're interested in personal stories, if you're interested in a personal history. It has a great flow through it, and it has great ideas, and it has great history. Really good. Take care.